Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel Biodiversity and Conservation. I am Subhash Rao from Ambika Prasad Research Foundation, India, and we are continuing our UGC NET examination series for environmental science subject. And today we are going to start a new unit, Unit 8, Environmental Assessment, Management and Legislation. And this is the first part. And here today we are going to study about the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So, as we know that there are some laws and their amendments and some plans which are initiated by our government of India to protect the environment and the species like plants and animals living in it. So let's start. Um, as we know, there are various laws, mainly four laws are there, which are the pillars for the protection of our environment. So one of them is Wildlife Protection Act. The four pillars of India's environmental safety are some of the primary laws that protect the environment, forests, and people. And they are first one is the Environment Protection Act, the Forest Conservation Act, the Wildlife Protection Act, and National Green Tribunal. So this is the four pillar of our environmental safety. So for one of them, as I said, is the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and it is an act of Parliament of India enacted for protection of plants and animal species. And before 1972, India had only five designated national parks. Among other reforms, the Act actually established scheduled protected plant and hunting certain animal species or harvesting these species was largely outlawed. And the Act provides for protection of wild animals, birds, and plants, and for matters connected therewith or connected with these matters like hunting of these wild animals, birds, it's totally banned and prohibited. And this Wildlife Act, it extends to the whole of India. And the Wildlife Protection Act actually constitutes mainly of 7 chapters, 66 sections, and 6 schedules. And the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 was actually um, enacted in 9 September 1972 to conserve animals, birds, plants, and those who are concerned with this, um, those who are concerned in that time of 1972. Now we are going to just know what are the sections present or what are the chapters and all. This is the overview, and in the next um, classes we will know more about these chapters, what are the sections, what they say, and who are included in the schedules, different schedules, and what are the laws that actually protects or conserves the species. So chapter 1, it's actually preliminary, and there are two sections. That is, it has first one is short title, extent, and commencement. Like when the Wildlife Protection Act was started and what is the rules that come under this. And second is the definitions. There are actually some terms um, that are used in these laws, and also it's related to our environment. So in this section we will know about the definitions, and according to the law, the Wildlife Protection Act, we will know what is how it is defined and what is the importance of uh, those terms. Now, chapter 2, it includes the authorities to be appointed or constitutes under the Act, like there are various units that look after the safety of our environment. So, and the it is divided into some groups, and there, if it's there are some groups, then there will be a group leader or something like that. So under this, the sections that come under this chapter are about the appointment of director and other officers, appointment of life warden and other officers. This section also includes the power to delegate, um, and about the constitution of National Board for Wildlife, what is the standing committee of National Board, what are the functions of the National Board, and next is constitution of State Board for Wildlife, what are the procedures that are followed by the board, and the duties of the State Board for Wildlife. So these things are these sections are included in chapter 2. Next one is chapter 3. It mainly um, forms rules or laws about hunting of wild animals. So it has sections that, like prohibition of hunting or hunting of wild animals to be permitted in certain cases, or grant of permit for special purposes, like in some communities they there is that in their culture they have to hunt. So in that cases some permissions are to be taken prior to hunting and all these things. So these are included in chapter 3. And this is to be noted that the section 10, 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17 were removed or omitted from this chapter. Now, next is chapter 3a. It says about protection of specified plants, and it includes sections like about prohibition of picking, uprooting, etc. of specified plant. Some plants are actually very important and very, what you can say, sensitive, or their presence is like keystone species, or those type of plants, they cannot be harmed, or they cannot be um, the left like that only, because if they will their number will decrease, and that will impact the nearby species also. So um, this is important section. And next is the grants of permit for special purposes, like um, for some special um, reasons only we can uproot or pick the plant from particular area to plant in another area. so that we can protect those plants, and like that type of permissions are to be taken prior any uprooting or picking activities. Then next section is cultivation of specified plants without license is prohibited, and dealing in specified plants without license prohibited. Declaration of stock, possession, etc. of plants by licensee, and purchase, etc. of specified plants to be government property. So these are some of the sections that discuss about some specified plants that are to be under protection, and what can we do, or what is government is doing to protect them. Those all things come under this chapter. Now next is chapter 4, protected areas. So there are different rules for different protected areas. Like for sanctuaries, there are some laws, in these sections we will study, what are the requirements for declaration of a sanctuary, and what we can do to protect or protection to sanctuaries, appointment of collector to determine the rights, bar of accrual of rights, and proclamation by collector, inquiry by collector, powers of collector, acquisition of rights, acquisition proceedings, time limit for completion of acquisition proceedings, delegation of collector's powers, a declaration of area as sanctuary, restriction on entry in sanctuary, grant of permit, destruction, etc. in a sanctuary prohibited without a permit, causing fire prohibited, then prohibition of entry into sanctuary with weapon, ban on use of injurious substances, control of sanctuaries, immunization of livestock, advisory committee, and restriction of certain persons in possession of arms. So these are some of the things that comes under this chapter, some sections, what are the rules required for declaration of a sanctuary, what is the role of collector in protecting these sanctuaries, and um, what are the restrictions on entry into the sanctuary, who are allowed into the sanctuary, and the permissions, how permissions are to be taken, and what permissions are required to go inside the sanctuaries, and mainly the fire and weapons, those are prohibited into inside the sanctuaries, so that also has to be checked. And next is the immunization of the um, organisms, wild organisms present inside the sanctuaries, and what are the who are the advisory committee, and all these things come under this chapter for sanctuaries. Now this is for national parks, what are the requirements for declaration of national parks, and declaration and management of a conservation reserve management committee, declaration and management of community reserve management committee. So these are some of the sections that come under this chapter. Now there are some sections that are omitted from this chapter, and um, for the sanctuaries or national parks declared by central government, it include a section of power of central discussion about the power of central government to declare areas as sanctuaries or national parks. So the next chapter, 4A, it discusses about the Central Zoo Authority and recognition of zoos. It includes some sections like the Constitution of Central Zoo Authority, the term of office and conditions of service of chairperson and members, etc. What is the functions of the authority, procedure to be regulated by the authority, and the grants and loans to authority and constitution of fund. Um, it it also includes some annual report and audit report to be laid before Parliament, recognition of zoos, acquisition of animals by a zoo, prohibition of teasing, etc. in a zoo. So these are some of the section under this chapter, which mainly discusses about the um, happenings inside the zoo, who are the authorities that are under who control the zoo, and what are the functions of those authorities that are in control of these central zoos, and what the procedures that they follow, and what are the rules that are required for the recognition of zoos, and how we can acquire animals that are to be placed inside the zoo. So those all things are discussed in this chapter. Now, chapter 4b, National Tiger Conservation Authority. So here it discusses about uh, first about the definition, about the authority, what it does, and all about the constitution of National Tiger Conservation Authority, the term of office and conditions of service of members, who are the officers and employees of Tiger Conservation Authority, and also discusses about the powers and functions of this authority, the procedure to be regulated by TCA, the grants and loans to TCA and constitution of fund, accounts and audit of TCA, the annual report of TCA, annual report and audit report to be laid before Parliament, and the constitution of steering committee, tiger conservation plan, alteration and denotification of tiger reserves, and establishment of Tiger Conservation Foundation. So these all come under this chapter, National Tiger Conservation Authority. Now, chapter 4c, it discusses mainly about the tiger and other endangered species, Crime Control Bureau. So in this we have mainly two sections, Constitution of Tiger and Other Endangered Species Crime Control Bureau. It discusses about what are the rules and regulations of this bureau, and what are the in the next section, powers and functions of Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Here we discuss about the powers and functions of this authority or this bureau, what are the steps they take to conserve or to protect the tiger and other endangered species. Now, the next chapter, chapter 5, it includes or discusses mainly about the trade or commerce in wild animals, animal articles, and trophies. So, it includes some sections like wild animals, etc., to be common property. So, animals like that cannot come under government property. So there are some rules that are to be followed to take wild animals as common property. There are some declarations, the immunity in certain cases, and it also discusses about the inquiry and preparation of inventories, about the certificate of ownership, regulation of transfer of animals, etc. Dealings in trophy and animal articles without license is prohibited. Like there is ban of dealings in the elephant tusk, or some bones or so skin or hide of tiger or cheetah. So these all things are prohibited without any license, and suspension or cancellation of licenses. It also has discussed about the purchase terms, maintenance of records, purchase of animals, etc. by licensee, the restriction on transportation of wildlife. Next is the purchase of captive animal, etc. by a person other than a licensee. So, what are the rules and regulations that are by followed to purchase any captive animal, etc. comes under this chapter. Now, chapter 5a, it mainly discusses about prohibition of trade or commerce in trophies, animal articles, etc., derived from certain animals. So it has specified some animals from whom the trade and commerce of their parts or skin, etc., is prohibited. So this includes three sections. I mean, first is definitions. Next is the prohibition of dealings in trophies, animal articles, etc., derived from scheduled animals. As I've said, the Wildlife Protection Act has six schedules. So under these schedules, some um, animals and plants come, which are protected for maintaining their population and all other reasons. We will study one by one when we study about these schedules. So, and the next section discusses about the declaration by the dealers. Um, Now the next chapter is chapter 6, prevention and detection of offenses. So it has some sections like power of entry, search, arrest, and detention. So here the officials have the power, or it discusses about the powers of the officials for easy entry, search, and arrest and detention of those offenders, those who break the laws. It discusses about the penalties and certain conditions to apply while granting bail for the attempts and abetment. It also discusses about the punishment for wrongful seizure, discusses about the power to compound offences, cognizance of offences, operation of other laws not barred, presumption to be made in certain cases, and offences by the companies. So these are all discussed in this chapter. Now the next chapter includes mainly 6a has discussed about the forfeiture of property derived from illegal hunting and trade. So it has so many sections like prohibition of holding illegally acquired property, or discusses about a competent authority who can seize or seize the property derived from illegal hunting and trade, identifies the illegally acquired property and seizes or freezes the illegally acquired property, management of property seized or forfeited under this chapter. It also discusses about the fine and the uh, punishments for illegal hunting. It also includes the procedure in relation to certain trust properties and certain transfer that are to be null and void. Some appeals, discusses about the appeals, and it also discusses about the power of jurisdiction, and it will also say about the competent authority and appellate tribunal to have powers of civil court. It also provides information to competent authority and discusses about certain officers to assist administrator, competent authority, and appellate tribunal. It has the power to take possession rectification of mistakes. So these are some of the sections that come under 6A chapter. Now the last chapter, it has miscellaneous sections like officers to be public servants, protection of action taken in good faith, reward to persons, reward by state government, power to alter entries in schedules, declaration of certain wild animals to be vermin. Like these terms, vermin and all, these terms are to be defined or discussed in section 2 of chapter 1. Now, next, it also discusses about the power of central government to make rules, power of state government to make rules, and the rights of scheduled tribes to be protected. And it also discusses about the repeal and savings. And these are schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the six schedules of Wildlife Protection Act. And these schedules give varying degrees of protection. The Schedule 1 and part of Schedule 2 provide absolute protection. Offences under these are prescribed the highest penalties, and species listed in Schedule 3 and Schedule 4 are also protected, but the penalties are much lower. Animals under Schedule 5, example common crows, fruit bats, rats, and mice, are legally considered vermin and may be hunted freely. And the specified endemic plants in Schedule 6 are prohibited from cultivation and planting. The hunting to the enforcement authorities have the power to compound offences under this schedule. That is, they can impose fines on the offenders. So, this is all from me today. Thank you.